Hey Colton, this is my third video from China, and I'm coming to you today from the outside in celebration of finishing Henry David Thoreau's Walden. I think it is way awesome that we were both able to read the same book at the same time, even though we're living in different continents. Thoreau's book gave me lots of mixed ideas and lots of mixed feelings, way more than I could ever talk about in a short little video like this. But first I have to start by saying that I think he is an incredible author. There were so many just really well-written parts and philosophical ideas and great quotes that I think that Walden is now one of my most highlighted books that I own. So as you know, Thoreau left his home, built a cabin in the woods, and lived there for 2 years. He fished and planted beans and observed water bugs and ants and birds and observed the changing of the seasons. His adventure is really awesome, and whenever I have like a super frustrating day at work, I can't help but think that living in the woods could be a better alternative. And right, like that's really what the romantic transcendentalist authors really wanted to write about, right? Romanticism seeks to embody the ideal and capture the sublime. It raises nature to the level of divinity and the commonplace and the mundane to the level of poetry. Those small ants that he saw would have been passed over by most people, but to Thoreau they represented a poetic metaphor that he could use to talk about humanity. Which is all, well and good and stuff, but I can't help but feel that Thoreau and Romanticism fail to recognize the complexity of life and of society. Like, Thoreau's simple life of independence and solitude sounds really romantic and sounds really appealing, but I can't help but think that it's fundamentally selfish. Thoreau is a healthy young man with land to squat on and initial resources to begin with. But what about the old? What about the young? What about the sick? What about the uneducated? What about the extremely poor who wouldn't have the resources to do this? What happens to them? Would people like that be able to build their own shelter or plant their own beans? What about natural disasters, or famine, or disease? Every child with cancer would die if all those who are now doctors had decided that they would rather hide their genius in a cabin in the woods. At times I thought that Thoreau was advocating a return of man to his natural state of survival of the fittest. Which, as a side note, would mean that a really large portion of the population would, die. The fact that we have managed to thwart the laws of nature and overcome survival of the fittest, I think is one of the greatest achievements of humanity. That we can display compassion and empathy towards those who might even be weaker than us, I think is one of the fundamental things that makes us humans. However, I don't really believe that Thoreau is advocating a mass exodus from the cities to the woods. If everybody lived around Walden Pond, it would just become another city. I think that what Thoreau was getting at was having us live in society, but choosing to live different from the way that we're living now. Thoreau's journey into the woods, on a larger scale, represents the need for each of us to flee the mundane, leave the mediocre, and abandon the status quo. We would build a new life for ourselves, one that we decide, and one that we build for ourselves from the ground up, just like he built his cabin. I think that Thoreau described it best when he said, "I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. I did not wish to live that which was not life. Living is so dear. Nor did I wish to practice resignation. I wanted to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life." That word deliberately is so cool. Our good friends Merriam and Webster say that deliberately means characterized by or resulting from careful and thorough consideration. Colton, after reading that, I had to really ask myself, do I live deliberately or do I just live by default? When I think of the lives of people that I respect and admire, none of them became great or made a difference by accident or by following the default path. Instead, they made conscious and deliberate choices that brought them there. After only like a week in the woods, Thoreau noticed that he'd already worn a path to his door. About this path, he said, "The surface of the earth is soft and impressible by the feet of men, and so with the paths which the mind travels. How worn and dusty then must be the highways of the world, how deep the ruts of tradition and conformity." I have found myself on so many nights watching some stupid TV show that I don't care about just by default. But I've never found myself on top of a mountain or doing something awesome without deliberate and intentional choices and actions. How many people drop out of high school or go to university simply because it's what people do in their rut of tradition and conformity? How many people live in a certain place, or have a certain career, or go on a certain holiday, or have a certain opinion, or do certain things, or avoid doing certain things, without ever actually deliberately choosing that that's what they want? Colton, how different do you think our lives would be if every day, every choice that we made was deliberate? Colton, I believe that the diversity of paths we can take in our life are immense, and that one path is not necessarily any better than any of the other paths that we can choose. We just need to make sure that we're doing it intentionally, on purpose, and with deliberation, and like Thoreau, try to suck all of the marrow out of life. Well, I hope you liked the book, and I hope you liked the taste of life marrow.